In our previous videos, we had talked about how you might be creating a word cloud to summarize your information. And while doing that, a word pops out at you and you want to then figure out what is it people are saying about that particular word. So let's look at how you would do a word search as you're exploring your text. Now, this assumes that you have one. Let's go back just quick through the beginning. It assumes one, that you have scraped your PDF. So we have AI Can, and we have pulled it from wherever it's located and put it into our system, and it was a mess. Okay, so we did that. Then we pre-processed and we used our cleaning here using our function RE, where we subbed in for all these weird looking symbols, we subbed in blank space. Okay, we left the punctuation into it so that we could tokenize based on sentence. And so we have a previous video where we did sentence tokenization. Find that here. There we go. And so we had used nltk.tokenize, imported sent tokenize, and created this little process flow here that was going to tokenize by sentence and replace any periods with empty spaces. Okay, all lowercase and empty, and no periods at the end. We had done that for Canada and the US and EU, and we got it looks like this. Okay, so if you are at the point of sentence tokenization, then we can do a word search. And so I'm just going to go down to our word search section. There we go. So we have our AI Can sentence is what you see here. Okay. Now, if you want to work along with us on this, we are at drstephpowers.github.io/BIA, and we are here where it says text mining. Okay. You'll need to make sure as well to download the PDFs, put them in your Google Drive, link your Google Drive to it so that you can pull in the content. So look at previous videos for how that's done, or the beginning of this set of workbook here to set that up. Okay, now that we have our sentences, what we're going to do is we're going to create a function that says has this keyword. And then it's going to look at the sentence, or we're going to give it some sentences, and we're going to give it the keyword. We're going to create an empty list called context, and then we'll create a loop for sent in sentence. So it's going to go through the sentences. And if the keyword is in the sentences, then it's going to append that sentence to our empty list. Essentially, it's going to go through all of this. And if the word artificial, for example, appears in the sentence, it's going to pull that sentence and put it into our list and return our list. Okay, that's what this function is doing here. So, for example, we saw in our word cloud, the word bias popped up. So let's say, what are they saying in that document about bias? So bias equals has keyword, AI Can underscore sentence, or the tokenized sentence list, and then show me the word bias. So when I do this and then I say, okay, output bias, I can see at a quick glance all the times that bias are discussed. This includes assessing for bias in stereotypical associations, generate content that provides holistic perspectives and minimizes bias. Best practices for federal institutions is to consider potential bias. So making sure that people understand that generative AI can be biased. We could try other words that might have popped up in our word cloud, and we want to know what is happening with that. Safety doesn't appear in the Canadian one. So we could look at, right, safety appeared in one of them. I can't remember which one, but we could look at what are they talking about when there's safety. The Canadian one doesn't include the word safety in it. We could look at generative AI by federal institutions. So you could look at a set where it is multiple words tied together. And we can see here we have one where it says generative AI by federal institutions. Now, I use this a lot when I am quickly analyzing a survey. So if I am analyzing a survey that has open-ended questions, so for example, in bargaining, we send out a survey, hey, union members, what are your top priorities? What are your top concerns? We got hundreds of responses and they write in their feedback. Well, I do a word cloud. At quick glance, I can see the words that appear many times. Pay, workload, those types of things pop up. So then what I want to do is I see one that's kind of different. Maybe it's not something I expected to see in the survey. And so what I do then is I use this function here, this has keyword, to then explore more what they're talking about. So for example, let's take our bargain, our clean version of our bargain. Notice this is not the coded version. This is just the cleaned version. And that way it still has all the text in it. Question 16 was the question where they could write in. And we want to make sure first that it is recognized as a string. So we set the type as string. And so flexibility showed up in one of our word clouds. And what I want to know is, what do they mean by flexibility? So we're going to do has keyword from that column 16 in that data frame. And it's already been told that it's a string. So it's then going to pull all the sentences that relate to our word flexibility. Notice in this case, because I'm doing it from a survey where it has each row is a different comment, I don't have to tokenize by sentence. In the previous version, I had tokenized by sentence. In this case, what I want it to do is not give me a sentence, but give me the full response from the survey respondent if they used flexibility. So some person's response says more flexibility on work from home for part-time. Provide childcare, provide more flexibility as to when I work so I can work around childcare. That's the full response to the question, and it's a response that included the word flexibility. So when I look at the word flexibility across these, what they seem to be referring to is flexibility as to what time their shift is, or whether they are working from home or at the location. Those seem to be the two that are coming up. So now I know when they say flexibility, they either mean shift time or they mean home versus work. We could also separate out and see if there's a difference in what people mean about flexibility based on a group. So we can take a nominal question like question 2, which was part-time or full-time, and we separate it out into two data sets here. These two data sets we'll call data frame 1 and data frame 2. Data frame 1 is where question 2 equals part-time. Data frame 2 is where question 2 equals full-time. And then we're going to say, okay, find me flexibility, but only within that table that is just part-time. And then find me flexibility, but only within the table that is full-time. So I'm essentially running this twice, but with DF1 and DF2. And that way I can compare flexibility comments for the part-timers versus the full-timers. So the part-timers, one flexibility, let's see, work from home. The other one says time of work. So it looks like the concerns of the time they work, as well as the home versus on location, appear in both. So there doesn't seem to be a difference between part-timers and full-timers in terms of how they define flexibility. They both want flexibility, either shift time or in terms of location.